Back in. Enjoyed the popcorn and the conversations, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, so we're at the last session of the conference. We've had a whole range of talks and panels, inspirational talks, talks dialing up our emotions, focusing on the humans behind the leaders and the titles, tactical talks, a lot of tactical talks today as well. And so it made sense to close the conference on some really candid, authentic conversations, bringing back the focus on, again, people before pixels. Yeah, thank you. So that's why, and also, people have been saying thank you so much for putting great programming, great content for the conference. I do want to point out this last session, I really did very less work to put together this last session. I'm extremely grateful to our facilitator, Bob, who helped me a lot in crafting the panelists and the conversations that you'll be getting to hear from this incredible closing keynote panel. So, big round of applause for Bob Baxley. Bob's been a seasoned design executive for the last 3 decades, worked at some of Silicon Valley's most respected companies, Apple, Yahoo, Pinterest. So beyond all the incredible career achievements, if you do find a few minutes with Bob, he also has some incredible stories from all corners of design. I just learned yesterday how Adobe got its name. So make sure you catch him after the panel. No, I think it's for you to tell Bob. Yeah, but big round of applause for Bob Baxley. Thank you.
Thanks, Preet. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Thanks, everybody. I get to host the closing keynote. How cool is that? And just a quick nod to what Preet said. Katrina and I just happened to be having a random phone call through Meetsy. I think we met through something, and just in the context of meeting each other online and chatting, it came up that we were going to be doing that. I was coming to this conference, and she was available, and it turned into I made an intro to Preet, and this all happened in the last couple of weeks or something. So my advice to you is take the call. Really, just get Calendly set up, open your calendar, and just reach out and chat to people. So I'm going to bring up my panelists, so to speak. We've got, why don't you guys come on up, and then I'll introduce you. You just come on up as a group. And I'm very grateful for all these folks participating. Yay! And you guys can sit in whatever order works for you. We're going to start. Christina's got a big smile. I get this chair. Come on. So I'm just, I'm going to start with some name, rank, and serial number. I think you guys have already heard from a couple of folks. There you go. Yeah. I think you've heard from a couple of these folks, but I'm going to go through just sort of name, rank, and serial number, and then we're going to shift the intros a little bit. So Levon Sharrow, currently at Patagonia, been there since 2017, previously Nike, Huge, Red Rhino, and some other places. You live in LA?
Ventura, which is north of LA.
Yep, and Ventura is where Patagonia was founded. If you ever go there, you can see the shed where Yvonne wielded the first piton.
All the blacksmithing, yep.
Yeah, there you go. And then we've got Katrina Alcorn. Katrina, as you know, recently left IBM, previously Autodesk for 5 years, GE, Hot Studio, and some other stuff. Interestingly, degrees in English and journalism, further proof that most designers are refugees from other careers. And you live outside New York City with a couple of kids that are drinking too much or something like that, yeah. And then Christina Goldschmidt recently moved to Warner Music Group. Before that, she was at Etsy for almost 4 years. And then she has this incredible potpourri of experiences. I was just looking at her LinkedIn. I think it's 35 different experiences. Just a few highlights: Accenture, Cake and Arrow, which is a studio or an agency.
Yeah, a small studio.
Yeah, and then Morgan Stanley, American Express, Merrill Lynch, and some other stuff, which obviously naturally leads to Etsy. And then your education also, so cultural anthropology, DW, bachelor's in electronic media arts, and an MBA from Stern. We won't hold that against you. And you also live in New York City. So that's name, rank, and serial number, but I want to try something a little bit different. Some of you may know, and if you don't know, this is a bit of a shameless plug. I do a podcast called Reconsidering with Aaron Walter, who many of you might know from Envision. Aaron also hosts Design Better with Eli Woolley. And then our other co-host is Meredith Black, who some of you might know from Design Ops Assembly. And the podcast Reconsidering is really more of a self-help podcast than anything about design. We occasionally get some design leaders on there, but it's a little bit different from that. And we begin every episode with a lightning round, which is sort of, do you like this or that? And it's not really preferences. The questions get a little tricky. So I've got some for all of you. I'm going to sit down now. There's 5 for each of you. So Levon, we're going to start with you.
Great.
Yeah, you ready?
Great. I'm ready.
Rock
Do I
or-
just answer one or the other and not elaborate?
You can elaborate if you want,
Okay,
but I'm
thank you.
not going to kick you off stage. But
Great.
the goal is you're going to kind of go one or the
Rapid
other.
fire.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Rock or ice?
Rock.
Computer or smartphone?
Smartphone.
Cash or equity?
Cash.
All yours are. I know all of you are thinking about this for yourselves right now too. YouTube or Netflix?
YouTube.
Nice. Player or coach?
Ooh. Coach.
Okay. Katrina, photo or video?
Oh, come on. Photo.
Okay. Mansion or apartment?
Oof. Give me the hard ones.
I knew you could take it. Come on.
Fine, mansion. I live in Westchester.
Okay, there we go. Mansion. Scripted or improvised?
Improvised.
Wide or deep?
Deep.
Seat at the table or a chair in the studio?
Seat at the table.
Okay, nice. Christina, you ready?
I'm really scared.
Okay. Suitcase or backpack?
Backpack.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't figure you for backpack. Actually, I thought you'd go suitcase. That's nice.
Oh no,
There you
I
go.
took a backpack here.
Okay. Oh, very nice. Wow. Okay, we should talk about that. Home or office?
Office.
Greatest or latest?
Greatest.
Get it right or get it right now?
Both.
Such a hedge. Yeah. And finally, manage or lead?
Lead.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. I feel like these things do help us know you a little bit better. Yeah, so shift the conversation a little bit. So.
I want to go back to ice. I love ice in my drinks, so
There you
can't
go.
betray it.
Okay. Okay. Look, so the title of this thing is Unseen Lives of Design Leaders, which is sufficiently vague that we can talk about anything we want. I want to start with, I don't want to call it the elephant in the room, but you don't have to spend too much time on LinkedIn to see a lot of frustrated, disheartened people. Some of that's naturally related to layoffs, but I think it's much deeper than just job security. It's feeling to me a little bit like design's kind of in a midlife crisis. And so, Katrina, you're nodding so much. I'm going to start with you. Like, apparently you feel that as well, And do you have some thoughts as to where it's coming from?
Where the frustration is coming from, or where the layoffs are coming from?
No,
or
no,
where
no. The mood,
Oh, the mood. So some of it is our profession. I think, we can point to examples where design is thriving, but we can point to a whole lot of examples where it's not. And a lot of us have been doing this for a long time, and it feels like, seriously, we still have to explain this. So I think there's some of that, and then there's layoffs on top of it. I also think there's just a lot going on in the world. I mean, we were talking about where AI is going, where climate change is going, late stage capitalism issues. We have a very consequential election coming up this year in the U.S. that affects the whole world, not just the U.S. So I think people, there's a lot of fatigue around just worrying about where things are going.
Mm-hmm. So you think it's just sort of a general malaise, just general heightened anxiety?
I think our personal lives are impacted by our work, and also, we look ahead at the technology we're developing, and we're wondering where that's going, and we worry about, the big wicked problems in this world that have not been fixed. Yeah.
Christina, I'm going to jump over to you for a second, because are you feeling it as well?
I definitely feel it. I think that as designers, we went into this profession as a calling. The majority of us could do a lot of other things. Clearly, you saw that I've done a lot of other things. And it feels like if we aren't able to make a difference or make change or fix problems, that sometimes we feel like we aren't able to do what we were here to do. And I think that very much all of that uncertainty that Katrina was talking about is compounding that. But I think as leaders, it's our job to actually help bring clarity to that and help people understand the signal through the noise, in a sense, to understand what we can change and what we can control, and to help people see where they are making a difference, and also where they can take care of themselves, where sometimes other systems and structures maybe tell them not to or don't give them the signals that they should be, but that they really should.
Levon, I'm going to go to you now. So you actually do work in one of the most mission-driven companies in the world. Do you feel it differently at Patagonia maybe than what you see in other places?
Yeah, I would say I feel extremely fortunate and privileged to be at a place where a story that I can tell is, back in the 90s, they had to lay people off at a time when they had a boom and then there was a little bit of a bust. they had to lay off around 100 people, which to them was really, they took that hard. And they decided from there as a management and organization that they would never want to do that ever again in the future. So that takes a lot of hard decisions of like related to growth, and you may want to be able to do more, but doing less with what you have, doing better, became more of that factor of why I might not be as at risk as others. Like I do think about that, and I feel guilty. I also think in my time working through design, like I started in graphic design, so I'm coming from an area where it's a craft, and it's something where there was a lot more experimental work happening, particularly in digital and with experiences that it seems like design has become very like conformed and commodified to business, and that can only lead to the types of tensions we're seeing where everyone's really like wanting to lead and change, but there's a limited capacity to what can actually happen. And I think it's putting people in a tough spot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart people capable of amazing things that are laid off now. And that's extremely sad as a designer. Like I want to be like, I'd love to hire you. Yeah. But I can't.
Yeah, it does seem like there's just this crazy amount of talent that's on the sidelines.
Yeah. And I just think like, is it time for that for there to be like a design revolution of some sort where it's like banding together to kind of get over some of the things that are either limiting beliefs or limited bounds.
Have you gotten to interact with Levon personally at all?
A little bit, yeah. He's asked about my dog. That's about it.
Can you, I mean, I got to work at Apple when Steve Jobs was there, and so I got a sense of what it was like being in a company when you have that kind of a leader. Can you maybe help all of us kind of understand where
Sure.
Levon's coming from, and maybe why he has that orientation?
Yeah, I think it. I don't want to. He would be best at telling this,
Sure.
and other people would be best at telling this. But my interpretation of this, based on my time there and time asking a lot of questions and reading a lot of the historical artifacts that exist, is it's been this consistent message of looking out at the world or looking out at people, looking out at a product and trying to do better through curiosity, but also knowing the impact of what you're doing. And that those two things, like improving, whether it's environment or human experience, and having less of an impact that's detrimental to society or environment, those become guiding design principles effectively, where they do have a set of guiding principles that are based on this conversation from a product point of view, where it's like a good example is it durable? Is it repairable? Is it made with as least amount of waste as possible in the process? And I think it's the notion that we're here as part of nature. We're not above it, right? And if we want to keep it beautiful, if we want to have healthy river systems and clean air, there's onus on both corporations and individuals, I think.
Yeah, I like that part about impact, because we were talking about this a little bit at lunch, and I think the designer's mentality is to be trying to think through like what the next level effects are. And in some ways that makes it feel like as a function we're moving slower than our counterparts, because they don't seem to give a damn. But but it's interesting that Patagonia and a very small group of other companies seem to be trying to think through, what's the next level impact. Katrina, maybe you could talk about that at IBM. I think IBM's a bit of an enigma to most people, because you think of it as Big Blue and hardware manufacturing, but that's not at all what IBM is about today. And that letter from Thomas Watson about the value of design, the Paul Rand work. I mean, there's like a design currency that runs through IBM that I think few people appreciate.
Yeah, there's actually a movie that just came out about it. And a bunch of our designers were in it, and I'm in it. But it's about the Elliott Noyes era. So it's not even about IBM. It's about Elliott Noyes, but half his career was at IBM. So in the 50s, Thomas Watson Jr. was the CEO of IBM. He had this vision. He's the one who famously said good design is good business. He believed that. He was inspired by the, I think it's Olivetti typewriter stores in Italy.
Yeah.
And he ended up bringing in Elliot Noyes, who was a really accomplished architect and industrial designer. So this is in the era of like pan design leaders where like you did more than one thing. And then Noyes brought in the most famous designers of their times, Charles and Ray Eames, Paul Rand, Eero Saarinen, a bunch of other names you would recognize. And they established the IBM design program, the one that ultimately I ended up leading, but it went fallow. So what happens is you need that executive leadership at the top to believe in, innovation, design mindsets. Elliot Noyes had that with Thomas Watson Jr., but it went away after a couple decades. And then there was a long, quiet period where there was a small, mighty team of designers really trying to, lead the charge, but they didn't have that critical mass, of course. And then the reinvention of design happened under Ginny Rometty, who was the the first female CEO at IBM.
So at IBM, do they actually believe design is good business? And if they do, could they maybe
when you
tell
say
some more
they,
people?
when you say they, you're talking about 250,000 people. So
Okay.
your results will vary,
Yeah.
And you're talking about it's a 112-year-old company.
Mm-hmm.
So, there were eras where design was the thing. Thomas Watson Jr., design was the thing. Ginny Rometty, design was the thing. There's now a very established design practice, but it's got different leadership now. There's no GM role leading design at IBM anymore, so it's a different era now.
So Christina, as I mentioned, you've worked in a lot of different places, and not many of them thought of as design places, but it's an amazing career, and there was something that took you from job to job, and I assume that wasn't just compensation and role and stuff, and there was something that you found in all those different companies. Is there a thread? Like, do you look at those companies and you're like, oh, that's a leader I want to follow, or there's a design thing here I want to do? Like, how have you stitched together your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that when people look at my background, they don't see the thread. But when I choose jobs, first and foremost, it's what am I learning? Are the people amazing? Those are the things I ask. And then also, what do I have to contribute? Mm-hmm. And there's actually some interesting threads, and one of them is actually transformation. So I go places where I can help provide transformation. And a lot of that is cultural. A lot of that is in the product and the experience. And actually, the way that I do transformation is actually borrowing from other industries and places to learn and teach another industry, so that when you mash those two things together, you can actually get something else. So that's actually sort of an interesting way to look at my career of what can I learn from this other place that I can bring to this other new place and really drive transformation that they might not have ever looked before.
Yeah, so for jobs like that in the past, I've used the phrase a Mary Poppins job. So you come in, it's super dysfunctional, you get it all working again, and then you fly away with your umbrella and go to the next one. I don't know if that's exactly how you would describe that, but
No.
But it does feel like if you're I didn't have a great time at Pinterest, but that's a different thing. So it seems though if your focus is on transformation, at some point the transformation's done, right? And so is there an inherent you're sort of in sports parlance, you're sort of a journeyman player that's going to move around, and that's what you're looking for, is this is the moment in this place?
So my job at Accenture, I was in new ventures. Our thesis was that we were going to invent billion-dollar companies for existing Fortune 500 companies. In that instance, I'm going to go from client to client, and I could stay within that ecosystem and do that. At Warner, we have a multi-year, 10-year transformation story that our CEO just published probably about 2 weeks ago. And that includes the opportunity to go into a software as a service SaaS business. Mm-hmm. That includes really helping to unlock how we can bring artists together with fans and help monetize that and deepen that relationship. And so there's so many different stages that I foresee as possible in my career there. That made it so attractive for me to move recently. So at certain places, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z things, and then look for the next. Other places, it's, oh, this is a place that has a multi-year, multi-stage transformation journey that I can go through those multiple ways.
Yeah, I experienced right there. I experienced some of that at Apple. Like it was always like when you got hired in at Apple, and I started there in 2006. When you started at Apple, like everybody kind of kept their same job title for decades, but the job you were doing was radically different because the company was growing around you so quickly and shifting. And Katrina, you
I was going to kind of plus one on Christina's career path and how. So I used to teach design thinking, and there's a Luma technique in the Luma design thinking methods called alternative worlds. Is anyone a Luma practitioner? Yeah, you know this one. So the idea is that you're trying to come up with solutions to a problem, and then just to kind of get your brain working in a different way, you'd say, okay, how would so-and-so solve the problem? And that's what I think you've done with your career. So the example we would use in Luma is let's say you're trying to improve the hospital experience. Well, let's look at how hotels make people feel welcome, and now let's see what we can do in a hospital. And I think there's something special about having these different industries in your background and being able to apply those different lessons in areas where they're not, that isn't the solution.
Yeah. I also teach design thinking, and I also teach that method, and
Okay.
and I believe that design thinking applies to anything, including our lives.
Yes.
So I love the way that you've brought that together.
I'm always confused by design thinking because I didn't know there was any other kind.
Right,
It's
right.
Like, isn't that
It's
just
just
thinking?
thinking.
Like, can you not? Like, how else would
Problem
you do it?
solving.
You wouldn't actually prototype and test things out. Like, what? How else could you
What do you
function?
do?
Yeah. You wanted to jump in, Levon?
I was just going to say, sometimes I hear a lot of these terms, and they're almost like terms that have just always existed in my own mind. And I'm like, oh, you're talking about this thing that I do, or this way that I'm thinking of, and there's a word for it, or there's a methodology, or there's someone has already coined this, and I always appreciate that about the documentation side of design theory and everything, because it's good to lean into.
Yeah. Maybe you can contrast for us a little bit. You were at Nike, and then at Nike a year and a half, and then Patagonia now for 7 years or so.
7 years.
Yeah. Arguably similar companies and similar businesses, but I suspect dramatically different. Well, certainly different scale. And
Yeah,
then probably
way different.
Yeah, wildly different cultures, I would think.
Yeah, I would describe them. Yeah, they have similarities in the sense that it's a lot of really talented people on a campus, working in different directions every which way on different sport verticals, right, or businesses, and trying similar challenges. They're both product companies. Where they differ, I think, goes back to the founding principles of why they exist. I'm not really sure why Nike exists. I think there's a really long story behind that. But I know why Patagonia exists definitively, and I think that the answer of that is different. One exists, obviously we live within a system that we have to make money and we have to survive within capitalism, but there are ways within there to not be as probably wasteful or limiting the impact of designers on our planet, right? So I feel like there's a lot more opportunity within a place like Patagonia to solve broader problems than more narrow problems, I would say, as a UX designer.
Yeah. It's also interesting thinking about Phil Knight, who founded Nike. He wasn't actually that much of an athlete himself. He got the idea for the shoes from working with Bill, right? With Bill Browder, and they
it was
created the shoes and the waffle iron and stuff.
Yeah, and both have really amazing origin stories, and I think there's some shared things and shared principles. And one of the things that I latched onto around the not just the internal culture or sentiment within design, but the outward, which is that influencing other businesses with new practices. And good examples are just open sourcing technologies or open sourcing business practices. One thing that comes to mind recently was we partnered with Samsung to come out with a washing machine that helped with microplastic filtration when you wash your clothes. And it's that kind of thing where none of us knew that was happening, but it was happening.
Yeah,
and
cool.
it's that's a big design move to me.
Yeah. If you guys haven't read Yvonne's first book, Let My People Go Surfing, highly recommend it. Like about half of the book is sort of his biography, and then the second half is sort of his business principles. And he talks. One of the things that really stuck with me is he talks about design as phase 0 of engineering.
Yes.
And that if you design a product that can't be made, it costs and stuff, you haven't really designed it. And there's a famous anecdote in there where he's sitting around a table with his execs, and he says, "What's the finest shirt made?" And somebody identifies this Italian shirt that's like $300, and he says, "What happens if you wash it?" And they go, "Well, my God, you would never wash it." And then he's like, "Well, how is it possibly the best shirt then?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a fashion company for sure.
Yeah. It's a great book. Katrina, were you at IDEO?
I was at Autodesk.
And then,
not IDEO.
Okay, and Hot Studio
Hot,
before that. Yeah.
Hot was a small boutique agency in San Francisco that was bought by Facebook about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and Hot's, at least in the Bay Area, Hot's very well known. Maria Giudice is their very lovely and somewhat flamboyant founder, and she's a kind of a force of nature.
Maria and I are going to be sharing an igloo in Finland in 2 months. We're going to go see we're both speaking at a conference, and then we're going to go see the Northern Lights. She's my former boss, and now she's a friend.
Yeah. She's great. She's doing executive coaching now. So you would have been at Hot kind of in the run-up of Web 2.0 and some of that sort of stuff. So what was, like, how were you thinking about design and business and like the culture? Because that was definitely that was a moment when everything felt ascendant and the world was filled with possibilities.
It wasn't. So I was at Hot from 2000, I think it was like 2000, 2002 to 2008. I don't know. You can check my LinkedIn. So like around those years. And I remember, I was a new manager. That was my first management role. And that was hard because no one trains you to be a manager. You're really good at what you do and people are impressed and they give you a bunch of people. And it's like, what do I do? I'm good at it now, just in case anyone is wondering. But this is 20 years later. So, that was taking up a lot of my brain. And then just, it was consulting. And those of, how many people in consulting? I can kind of see you. Yeah, it's like a minority of the group, but enough. I mean, it's very different from being in-house and in product design, which I've also done. And so it's a lot of hustle and a lot of pitching and a lot of selling. And then, as the team grew, I wasn't doing much designing. But I do remember having a moment where I was like, is this all there is to it? It's just more boxes and arrows? Like, it just felt like the web got really boring. Like, we figured out hypertext, and now we just move the boxes around. Maybe I need to go find something else to do. And then, I don't know, then it got interesting again. Why did it get interesting? I think because bandwidth got bigger, and then we could do more interactively, and then suddenly we were, like, developing applications. Like, one of my favorite projects at Hot was Marie and I worked on this together. We stayed in a tent together for this one.
Well, it's certainly
so Hurricane Katrina happens to be the same name. That actually was a thing because I went in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and my name tag. People kept freaking out about my name tag. But anyway, we worked with this organization called Architecture for Humanity, and they were helping rebuild after all these people had lost homes. And Marie and I ended up basically coming up with a concept for this collaborative tool that architects could use to collaborate on these pro bono projects. And this was very cutting edge for its time, but I think that was the moment when the web got interesting to me again. And then with AI, it's gotten like mind-blowingly interesting.
Yeah, so I'm going to push on that with you for a second, Christina, because the theme I hear, and I've experienced this myself, is we all get super excited when a new technology comes out. And I have to imagine that's the case with architecture or industrial design. They come up with a new manufacturing technique, a new material, and they figured out concrete, like the architects must have been thrilled, right, or whatever. But I also kind of wonder, like, are we just not really being grown-ups? Like, there's going to be long periods of time.
No, I have to respond to that.
Okay,
I have to respond to that. It wasn't about not being a grown-up. Here's why I got into design, and we should all talk about why we did this. But the reason I got into design is I needed to pay my school loans, and I was doing documentary films, and I didn't even have health insurance. It was ridiculous. So that's why I got into design. But I stayed in design. It turned out to be interesting, thank goodness. And I stayed in it because I like solving problems. I don't care if it's an app or if it's digital or if it's analog. I don't care. I just like solving problems. And design gave me permission to do that all day, all the time. Yep. The problems we were solving in the early days of the web were like interesting because the technology was interesting, and then it got boring because you couldn't really solve that many problems. But then as the technology deepened, like, you know, I talked about it in my presentation earlier, like we're trying to figure out how to, you know, save lives with AI technology. We're trying to like solve world hunger and global warming. They're like we're deep in it now, and I think we could do this for a long time, and it could stay interesting. So I just wanted to make that plug because I've never been about the cool new shiny object. It's not about that to me. To me, it's about working with smart people, solving problems that actually matter.
Yeah. Christina, maybe you can help us understand like how you decide to move from a job. Like, are things keeping your attention? Like, how are you staying engaged, and how are you now kind of keeping going creatively, and you know, and not getting bored and slipping into the malaise that we do see so much on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I consider myself both a designer and a business person, right? You joked about my MBA, but I actually find it extremely useful because I actually do design businesses. And that is one of the things that we are doing at Warner. So that's very exciting to me. And a lot of it is how can I help the people and how can I help unlock people? And I think I have a mission to destigmatize mental health and to help people do their best work and to help people show up authentically and to love the work that they do. And so I like that for myself, right? And I want to do this. So it's interesting. I actually didn't choose to become a designer, but design chose me.
Yeah.
So I actually had planned to be an anthropologist, an archaeologist, and I was doing front-end development. And in the mid-'90s, you had to design your own stuff when you were building it. And I'm neurodiverse, and that actually gives me some, you know, like abilities to see the layouts differently and have a somewhat intuitive sense where I can definitely see when something is a pixel off, and it drives some people really crazy.
Yeah.
And so I showed up to university, and I was like, hey, I've been doing all this front-end work, and I've also been doing data viz and geographic information systems on maps, and I think that this could really do a lot of work like predictively in the social sciences. And they said, what? Like, we don't do that. And then my university hired me to be a web designer. And I was like, oh, is this my calling in life? Is this what I'm gonna do? And then I switched universities to go get, you know, a proper digital design degree and continue that work. Yeah. But it's like solving problems and unlocking people to make sure that they're having the best time and for them to see all of their potential, and also to you know, see the potential in the experience, see the potential in the business, and to really help heighten those things. That gets me really excited.
Levon, how about you? Like, what's your origin story and what keeps you going?
That's a long one, but I was just trying to think about that because there's a lot of what I'm hearing in both, and I'm just internally saying, like, yeah, that's why I do it. Like, I just want to solve problems. I don't really care in which medium, and that sort of pushed me into, like, exploring other things like product design, like physical product design, or I make music as well, and I continue to do the things I love to do that are oriented around, I don't know, problem solving, I suppose. But, you know, originally it was very similar to Katrina. I needed to have an income.
Yep.
And I come from a family that's pretty humble beginnings. I'm a bumpkin. And, you know, I think what really inspired me early on was probably my older brother, who led me into skateboarding and punk rock and hip hop and all the colors of the world, and you know, pot and you know, like,
and all the colors of the world.
All the colors of the world again. And you know, not to say, like, I'm not trying to, you know, say that's everyone's path or whatever, but I just, you know, I think I never imagined that I would probably be here, for example. So I just thought that I really loved, again, like, solving a problem. And then I think through some guidance and orientation, I landed in design. but not having been able to actually draw anything in my life or make anything. So I felt kind of like a fraud during that as well. But I still continue on just this. I think I've said this to a couple friends. I think my biggest asset is my brain and the words and the things that I try to reframe for myself or for others, and all the tools and stuff. Like all of us here, we can learn the tools. But again, like I liked what you said about what kept me in design, and I think I love it. I think it's something that I'm just into on every level, but now it's become more. I came in very much like craft oriented, but now I'm coming out more. There's a lot of things that, as these unique design-minded, problem-solving people, I think we haven't even tapped into yet. And I don't know that I ever will, but I'd love to. I'd love to progress in that way, beyond the like pixels and whatever else.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that like the designer's mindset is to be operating with intentionality and be trying to think multiple steps ahead. And maybe some of you are exceptions, but when I reflect on my own career, I talk to other designers, it seems awfully opportunistic, right? Like I don't know too many people that have actually designed their careers and thought about like where am I trying to get? And I'm a little older than your average bear and stuff, and so I'm kind of looking back, kind of wishing I had been a little bit more thoughtful about it, because I might have been able to direct it different ways. Like
I feel the same way though.
Okay, so it's not an age thing. It's just
I just
feels like you kind of. I mean, at least in my case, I just feel like I stumbled from one thing to the next, and it's worked out great because of where I live and the moment in which I was born. But it seems kind of random,
Yeah, I think it's more random now, but I don't think there was too much intentionality until like the last few years for me personally.
Yeah. Katrina, I'll start with you. Was there?
So I used to laugh because when I led the practice at design practice at IBM. It was amazing practice, amazing history, huge group of people designing software and hardware, and people would be like, "How did you make this happen?" And I'd be like, "Oh, let me tell you. I, couldn't make it in journalism because I didn't have any money. And then I fell into this startup, and my skill was writing, so I was a content strategist. I didn't even know what that was. And then I realized, like, the power was in design, so I just worked my way up that. And then I realized, like, no, the power was in management, and then I got into that. And then I burned out, and I wrote a book about it. And then someone published the book. And then I was like, I'll never work in tech again. This is not a planned career, you guys.
Yeah.
and yes, and then it turned out that writing the book was actually a really great thing for my career. And for all I know, that was how I kind of rose how I stood out from other candidates when I eventually got the role at IBM. So nothing was planned, and I don't really know many people who've like planned it all out and had it actually work out. Because life, as John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're making plans. So the thing that I think, the advice I give for people is it's not so much follow your heart, but like go where the light is, go where the energy is. Like go, like when I wrote that book, I was called to write that book. And if I had been trying to build a career, I never would have written that book. But now I'm so glad I did. So I think like if we use our head too much we don't like listen to where the energy is and go there, then that's where we get into trouble.
I'll come back to you in a second. I just want to underscore that for everybody, because I talk to a lot of folks that are trying to get into management and trying to get into leadership, and there is this myth that when you're at the beginning of your career or younger, that the people who lead 3,000-person teams at IBM or lead design at Patagonia or Warner Music Group, that they've got it all figured out and that this is exactly the plan. And I talk to all those folks too, and they're all like, "Wow, how did I get here? This is pretty amazing." Yeah, just encourage you to like set aside what you might describe as imposter syndrome and stuff. Like nobody else has it figured out either. The adults are not in the room; they don't exist. It's like
your path is your path. It's no one else's path, and that's beautiful. Like it's all about you. And some of it's going to be, like you said, opportunity.
Yeah.
Where's the opportunity? If you're banging your head against the wall, go to a different, go find the door.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a slight counterpoint.
Yeah.
That I do think, for those that know me, I'm a little bit more woo-woo than the average bear. Like you have the MBA side and then you have the super woo-woo side. I do believe that you can manifest some things and that you can put some loose plans into place. I do heavily agree that there is not one path, no one straight line, and there's such a variety of ways, clearly, such a variety of ways to get where you're going. But I personally have been like, oh, what are some of the paths that would help me achieve some of my goals? And I definitely look at that often and set my sights on that and have done that and have decided to make some choices that way. Yeah.
If you're comfortable, could you be a little bit more specific and kind of talk about like maybe techniques you've used or how you've designed this stuff?
Right. Yeah. One caveat that I will give before I go into that, though, I have been affected by every single major financial crisis that has ever existed since we've been doing the internet, though. So there are often moments when I get derailed. And the other aspect of me is that I go with that flow, right? So like I had what I thought was my dream job. I was planning to be an anthropologist, but then got this design degree. My job out of school was to work at the Discovery Channel, and then .com bust, right? And then the job that I got after that was creative director at a law firm, but
it's a big law firm.
But it was a big law firm, and now in the music industry, 99% of that is contracts, and I know a lot about contracts. Or after the downturn of 08, I graduated with an MBA and was planning to go back into design, which was not possible, but became a product manager in financial services, and that served me very well too. Yeah. So things like that. But I think you can look at, I actually take a marketing mindset. And maybe this is because I have an MBA in marketing that I take this mindset. But it's what are things that would give somebody clout or that would make someone interested in me for the things that I like to do or the story that I want to tell or that would be helpful. And what seems to be a bellwether of that, something that would be interesting. So since I was like, oh, I think I'm really good at this transformation thing, let me go do different types of agency and consulting experiences so that I can have a repeatable portfolio of doing that over and over and over again. And let me do it at progressively larger agencies and larger contexts so that I can also sell things like that I had a more strategic impact along that way. So going from a small studio to Accenture, where I was on the management consulting side, not on the studio side. Or something like, okay, I think where the future is going in product design is actually in-house in tech. So let me figure out how I can become a leader in that space, and that's when I actually went to Etsy. Yep. And so one of the things that I was selling when I was in management consulting was marketplaces as a business. So how can I leverage that? Where can I go? Where can I actually land that could net that out? Working with recruiters and trying to figure that out and accepting the opportunities that came my way, and then figuring out from my story where I would actually land, whereas it may not be marketable someplace else, but a place that was interested in my background so that I could continue on a path that I wanted to be on.
Yeah, I recently heard the phrase, when you're surfing, it's a lot more fun to be on the front of the wave than the back of the wave. So a little bit of it's just trying to find waves.
Can we continue on the woo-woo conversation? Because I want to go back on what I said about not being intentional, but I think I was intentional subconsciously. I've, in my path and over the years, like I bounced around quite a bit, like year, 2 years, 2 years, and I've been at somewhere for 7 years now, and that still is strange to me, and it feels like, should I be looking around? Am I still valuable? And I've seen people sort of like, and I've had opportunities to take on more responsibility and more money, and it was through that values exercise where I was pretty confused about what I wanted to do, that I realized like it's the long run for me, and I didn't have a good experience with all the short runs, sort of like trying to make more money, trying to climb some ladder, whereas I wanted to become more stable for myself. Like I'm an extremely sensitive person. I'm probably a masochist for being in design and receiving all the reviews and critiques and all this like having a seat at the table stuff where it's like, okay, I have to sort of like work through that, but I don't know that I can ever grasp anything if I'm doing it at places that I don't want to be or I'm not there long enough.
Yeah.
And so I've seen colleagues buy homes and amazing things have happened, and I'm renting my little house with my partner here, and I'm like, I'm having a good life though, and I feel like that's my intentionality there.
Yeah, that sounds like happiness.
Yeah. Something like
We've
it.
just got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to close by asking each of you, like, how are you taking care of yourselves these days? I mean, there's a lot going on, and I'm just going to kind of go in order here. So, Katrina, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, I wrote a book about burning out, so I'm a bit of an expert on taking care of yourself, having lived through that. So when I left IBM, it was kind of stressful, and and all of these jobs are stressful. I mean, they take up a lot of space. I don't know how anyone does anything else when you're doing jobs like this. So I feel like there's been this shedding, and now I have time and space, and I'm looking for my next role, but I'm also just having a great time. So I'm doing a lot of speaking and traveling, and I'm taking dance classes again, which I realized I'd let that slip away. I used to always dance, and I just got too busy. I'm a mom, and I work, and there is such a particular joy for me. I think all of us have something like this, but for me, it's dance, where I completely get out of my thinking, and I'm like physically in my body, and it's so joyful. So I'm doing a lot more dancing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks. Levon?
Quick answer, skateboarding.
Nice.
I still skateboard or snowboard. I walk my dog a lot, but yeah, I've thought, just in the vulnerability corner circle of trust, it's like I've been depressed for quite a few years. I'm on medication for that, obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's sort of like a daily mindset thing for me where I have to take care of myself anyway. And a lot of that has to do with who I surround myself with and what is coming in, what I let in. And that includes social media and anything around that. So when I feel best, it's when I'm away from the screen, when I'm outside, doing simple things.
Yeah, being human.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we didn't evolve to sit in front of those computers.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Christina, how about you?
I have a lot of things that I do. One, I want to thank you for sharing that. Being able to share that makes it a lot easier for other people too, so thank you. So for those that also know me, I also have anxiety disorder and am recovering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, so also very much have medication, 2 therapists that I work with, one that is my everyday sort of person and one that's a trauma-informed specialist that I work with. And so they are very helpful. I also have a deep community of friends and family that are supportive. And I think it's really important to also take care of very basic human needs. Am I getting very good nutrition, sleep, exercise, and feeding myself creatively? So I try to do things that don't involve work that actually feed creativity, right? So that's things like Ikebana or trying new things like ceramics, but pushing myself to get off of the computer as much as possible and actually into the 3D world, which is scary if you've been in digital for over 25 years. You're like, I only know 2D. And then I think it's anything that I can do to touch on my spirituality and to really have a dialogue with my subconscious. And so I have a deep breathwork practice and I have a ancestor practice. And I think no matter what you believe, you can either believe that you're having a conversation with your subconscious or you can believe in those other things, but really trying to figure out how your brain works, how to help and support your brain, and how you can let things go and move on and know what's really important in this life.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, it's been interesting doing this podcast because we've done about 50 episodes now, and you definitely learn that the human animal is kind of well understood. Like people have this figured out for a couple of thousand years, and it's exercise and nutrition and sleep and community and reflection, and there's a kind of a practice of about 6, maybe 8 things, and they're not hard to understand. They're hard to do, and it never goes away. It never gets easy. It's like just a day-to-day practice. So, anyways, thank you all. I have one last thing for everybody, and then we'll wrap up. I'm going to do a little bit of a guided meditation just to kind of connect people back to like why you're here. So, I don't know all of you. I know some of you, but I'm absolutely certain that everybody in this room is fundamentally a maker, and that separates you a little bit from a lot of other people that aren't in this room. I'm also absolutely certain that everybody in here is making in software. And whether by purpose or by accident, you found your way to being involved in making software. And that says to me that somewhere deep inside, you've chosen this medium, and there's some piece of you that's really in love with this medium. And so I want to see if we can kind of reconnect for that for a second. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. And I just want you to try to conjure back them in your head that moment when you first saw a computer and the first time you saw it do something magical. You know, maybe you visited a friend's house and their mom was a graphic designer and it's the first time you saw Photoshop and you were, 14. You know, maybe they got a computer at your school and it was the first time you got to see that. For me, I was 13, it was 1976. I was at my friend Glenn Wilkinson's house, and him and his dad had built a Heathkit computer. And I remember watching Glenn. It was kind of this weird metal box, and there was a black and white TV. And I'd never seen somebody make stuff, pixels change on a TV before, but Glenn was typing on the keyboard, and stuff was changing on the screen, and that sort of made sense to me as a typewriter. But then he typed something, and then the screen like put out a lot of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like that, I've never seen anything like that. And it was the first time I saw a machine that I felt was sort of fundamentally unknowable and unseeable. And I absolutely fell in love with computing. And to this day, when I get on the internet, when I'm navigating an app, when I'm using a credit card with my Apple Watch, I am absolutely blown away by what's happening. I just absolutely love computing. And part of the reason I'm a designer, and I think why you're a designer too, is because when that experience is not magical, and that moment that you're feeling right now, when you don't feel that, you know that you're missing out, that it could be so much better. And so as you leave the conference and kind of go back to your jobs and you deal with all the stuff you're having to deal with there, when you're having a hard day and it's a tough spot in a meeting, I hope you'll be able to bring back into your consciousness this moment you're feeling right now, this moment of the first time you saw the magic of the medium that we all have the privilege to work in. And I hope maybe that makes your day a little bit easier. So you can all open your eyes now. And how about a big round of applause for our panelists? Thank you.